Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns and today we're going to return to my Getting Organised series and think about what fleets could work for a medical organisation in Star Citizen. I've been inspired recently by the fantastic work of the Medrunners, and I think as SC evolves, the medical profession is almost going to become our equivalent of the fuel rats in Elite. While it might appeal to folks who just want to explore the more altruistic side of the verse, that's not to say it's not a potential goldmine for would-be doctors, nurses and paramedics. Medical gameplay can already be really fun and engaging, but as time goes on it's only going to get more important as the consequences of dying increase. This is going to be a pretty theorycraft heavy episode, just to warn you, but if you're keen on that sort of thing, grab yourself a cup of tea while I roll the intro, and then let's get into it. So it's been a hot minute since I've done an episode of Getting Organised, and for some of you this might be the first one that you've caught, so let's just take a moment to go over the rules of the game. In each episode we take a certain niche, today it's medical, and we build organisation fleets for a small 5-member org, a medium 30-member org, and a large 100-person org. This is meant to be a starting point for a discussion, so please do get involved down in the comments, and I'd even encourage you to head over and check out Starjump's Fleet Viewer to draft up some fleets like I'm going to do. The link will just be down in the video description. But before you do, let's just remember a few key things. First up, we're not concerned about things like the hard currency value of the ships involved. This isn't about which ships you should run out and buy for hard cash. I see these fleets as something a group of people would work together to put together in game. We're primarily concerned with the utility and the synergy of the ships that we choose. Secondly, this is a think ahead type exercise. We're looking to build an org for the eventual live or close to live version of the game, not for the just now instanton. Concept ships are fine to include, but we'll also need to think about future challenges that could be faced by orgs as the game systems are more thoroughly implemented. And finally, remember that it's not entirely about ships. Ships are cool, but it's really about discussing how players can work together. With all that said, let's kick it off with the 5-person fleet. So when it comes to the 5-person org, I think about this as very much a group of mates who just prefer to keep things small and amongst themselves. There's nothing to say bigger is better or small is king, different sizes of orgs have advantages and disadvantages. But I do think if you're going for a smaller org, the best thing to do is to stick to your knitting. SC has many overlapping professions, and as a general rule, I'd look to start with a highly focused approach at the smaller end. In effect, in this instance, I'd build everything around medical gameplay. You don't necessarily want to be trying to cover all of the bases yourselves when there's only 5 of you. At the smaller end, I think it's best to concentrate on being really good at your thing, and when it comes to stuff like combat protection or refueling capability, you can work together with other orgs to provide you with these aspects. The great thing about this approach is it doesn't have to be purely about credits changing hands. You can exchange services too. So for instance, the combat org might provide you with security, while you act as their medical backup, allowing them to concentrate on the business of pew-pewing stuff without having to worry too much about getting a grazed knee. Having said this, I think a galaxy provides a small org with a little bit of flexibility, so I've made it the mainstay of this small org fleet. The new modular ship from RSI has primarily been selected for its medical module, allowing you to treat the full range of injuries, with 3 Tier 3 beds for minor, 2 Tier 2s for the middle ground, and 1 Tier 1 bed for the most grievous of wounds. The Galaxy's hangar also allows you to bring one of my favourite new ships, the Anvil C8R Medical Rescue Pisces, which can complement your floating hospital quite nicely. This allows you to send a team of paramedics in to recover a patient without necessarily having to bring in the main ship. However, something which medical orgs are probably going to have to think about is maintaining their supplies. In the future, I'd imagine we'll move on from medbeds offering infinite respawn and treatment capability. There simply has to be something that makes the medical facilities offered by even advanced ships inferior to those offered by space stations and major LZs. So having the option to switch over to the cargo module and act as your own hauling company gives you that bit of flex, taking your capacity up to 564 SCU. Plus, as a small group of mates, if you do want to try your hand at a bit of cargo hauling or refining, you could just mix things up a little bit with a modular ship. Some people might question the all eggs one basket approach I'm taking here. You're welcome to question, that's kind of the idea. But I'd say something a small org does have to consider is their own logistics, and not just the shifting of supplies, but also of your vehicles around the verse. So as a medical org, you'll probably be nomadic to some degree, moving around the verse to various hotspots. Maybe war zones, maybe the sites of some natural disaster. But if you've got a limited crew, it could become troublesome quite quickly to move lots of ships around. And by concentrating on a single vessel that can carry your smaller craft with it, a skeleton crew could move the org's assets, then when you've got your max numbers available, you can be ready to get down to business as opposed to playing I Spy to pass the time in QT. When it comes to scaling things up to a 30-person org though, we get to start bringing in a bit more variety in ships. I've kept the RSI Galaxy and its C8R in, as I still think the duality of a small hospital and a supply ship makes sense. But the Galaxy loses its flagship status in this instance to the MISC Endeavour Hope. The Endeavour is a highly modular ship with options ranging from science labs to agricultural domes, but certain combinations get their own title. So the Hope combines the Endeavour's hospital module with a hangar to provide the ultimate mobile medical facility. I couldn't find any numbers within the Endeavour's documents, but based on the cutaway concept art, I think it's safe to say that the Hope will have a serious amount of medical beds of all varieties. And it's been confirmed as, unsurprisingly, having the all-important Tier 1 beds that allow respawns and the treatment of the most severe injuries. Obviously, the Endeavour is a long way down the pipeline given the complexity of the ship, and anything could realistically happen with it. But given that the hangar was built to fit 2 Drake Cutlass Reds, and that the Cutties have since grown quite substantially, I can see the Endeavour following most early concepts and ending up quite a bit larger than the dimensions stated. If the ship does indeed grow, then it would make sense for the hospital module's capacity to similarly increase in size. I've included the pair of Cutty Reds to act as ambulances for the Endeavour, since that's what's listed as fitting in the most recent docs. If the size does increase, you might want to consider using the Apollos, which we'll come on to in a bit, for this role instead. I think having the 2 hospitals in the form of the Endeavour and the Galaxy could really help the org operationally as well. The Endeavour's likely to be a sizable investment for your org, so keeping it safe will be a high priority. The smaller Galaxy, meanwhile, should enable you to have a field hospital closer to the danger zone, while the Hope hangs back and is delivered patients who might require further treatment or a longer time to heal. It could also offer a safer respawn facility for players who meet their end out in the black. In order to give the fleet a bit more of a rapid response capability, I've included 3 RSI Apollo medevacs. The RSI Apollo comes in 2 variants, the Triage in red and the medevac in white. The Triage is intended to be slightly faster than the medevac, while the medevac carries more firepower with the addition of a missile bay. It's not much, but considering these Apollos would represent the org's frontline response unit, I'd prefer to send them into hot zones with a bit more defensive capability. So I've opted to go with all medevacs. Internally, the Apollos are identical though, offering 2 patient treatment rooms that can have an element of modularity, allowing you to choose which tier of beds you have on board. I would imagine, although I can't find an exact reference, that this concept art shows a setup with tier 3 beds, and that as you increase the level of the beds up to tiers 2 and tier 1, you would get fewer in number to balance it out. The Apollos also benefit from having a drone system when that's implemented, allowing them to recover patients from outside and bring them into the safety of the ship. Finally, I've also incorporated a MISC Starfarer into the mix in this org, and that's just so that we can cover something like our own refueling. As I talked about in the beginning, I think the smaller the org, the more focus you should maintain. But as you grow, you can branch out a bit and cover other bases to reduce your dependence on other orgs for support. If you as a medical org need to respond quickly to a new hot zone, you might not want to wait around for a refueling truck to join you from another org. The brilliant thing about this exercise is that you could build a completely different org fleet for 30 people. So for example, you might think that it would be better to build a combat capability into the org at this stage, so you could focus on protecting yourselves, sacrificing some of your medical capability to accommodate the addition of those ships. And finally, let's take a look at how far you could push this with a large 100-person org. It's when we get to the large org that I look to incorporate one of SC's larger capital class ships. The Endeavour's technically a capital, but I think you'll agree that nothing says flagship quite like something of the Drake Kraken's size. Looking back through various episodes of Getting Organised, I do note that out of the 3 largest ships available to players, the Kraken is far and away my top pick over the Idris and the Javelin. And a huge part of this is the versatility of the Kraken when compared to the other 2. As a large carrier, it can carry a wing of fighters and bombers to fulfill a combat role. But whereas the Idris and Jav are confined to primarily a combat focus, the Kraken can switch out the ships on its deck and transport them for a variety of roles. I view the Kraken as very much a mobile base, suited for a number of different organisations. The landing pads appear big enough to accommodate a number of the Apollos in this fleet, and if you wanted, you could offer space to fighters that you hire to provide you with close protection. The Kraken's 3,792 SCU of cargo space also allows it to act as the logistics hub for the rest of the fleet, ensuring that your hospitals and ambulances are well stocked up, even if they're far away from civilization. Speaking of hospitals, I've added another Endeavour Hope to the mix since, at this scale, providing top-end medical facilities would probably be the lifeblood of the org. Having the optionality to operate hospitals in multiple locations or bring a heap of capacity to one area would help keep the credits rolling in. As well as the 2 Hopes, I've snuck in an Endeavour Olympic class. And this setup maximises the use of the Endeavour's biodome modules, giving you 4 total. The exact mechanics of agriculture in SE haven't been defined, but it's been stated that certain plants with medicinal properties will form the start of crafting chains that end in medical supplies. Incorporating the ability to grow your own could help to keep the org's overheads down, as rather than purchasing the end product at a premium, you're just providing it yourselves. Selling pharmaceutical products could also turn into a nice side hustle for the org. And speaking of keeping costs down, alongside the staff area for refueling, I've included an Anvil Crucible to ensure you can maintain your fleet. The Crucible nearly always gets added to fleets I build of this size, as I think once you're into the realm of operating capital ships, you should probably have an option to fix them. Again though, the Crucible and Starfarer don't solely have to be cost savers. If you're in the business of rescuing people in the medical sense, there's every chance that they might need their ship patching up and topping up with fuel. So having the scale to incorporate ships like this just helps you offer the full package. Another new addition to the mix is the Anvil Carrack. The Premier Exploration ship is again a ship I value highly for its versatility. It can act as a pathfinder when you're moving your org fleet, going on ahead to provide intel on what you're about to walk into, and helping you plan out the journey before setting off. It can move a not insignificant 456 SCU of cargo to help out with org logistics. And once you're actually in the field, it can provide a fairly rugged responder vehicle with tier 2 medical facilities on board, a hangar that can neatly accommodate a Pisces C8R, and capacity for ground vehicles. And this could be a winning feature if CIG, as I fully expect, bring in some form of medical ground vehicle. To round out the fleets, I've increased the Galaxies to 2 and brought the Apollo total up to 5 medevacs and 2 triages. I know I said that I preferred the medevac, but I think at this size of org you can bring in the flexibility of a couple of more lightly armed but fast triages, just specifically for the jobs where speed is the key. Again with this org, despite a few concessions to keeping down overheads, I've kept the focus quite narrowly on the medical aspect. And you might want to build a much more diverse fleet at this stage that can fend almost entirely for itself. Well, as long as someone's out there getting in trouble for you to come and rescue, that is. So that was my take on building a medical organisation for Star Citizen. I'll be honest, I let this series slip off since I always seem to have other videos to make. And I forgot how much I really enjoyed the process of building the fleets, but more importantly to me, thinking about the opportunities for people to work together in game. I'd be really keen to hear your ideas on what we could do differently, either down in the comments or over on Discord. The link for that's just in the video description. And we've got a forum channel for vids, and I'd be really interested to see people's fleets, as I think that visual representation helps a ton. And as ever again, thank you very much to Sargent for building the fantastic fleet viewer tool. I guess one of the things that really does come to the top of my mind when I go through making these episodes is when it comes to calculating the crew requirements. And at every stage from 5 to 100 people, it does really sink in when you do this, how many of us running a fleet will take. And if anything, it's these exercises that remind me I don't need to rush out and buy every single ship. It's much more important to find people I'd be happy to crew them with. If this vid did happen to tip you over the edge and make you think about buying SC, keep that in mind. My recommendation to potential new players is always just to start out with a starter ship like the Aurora or the Mustang, and not go too crazy in the very beginning. If you do create an account, just be sure to use a referral code. Mine's the one up on screen, but if you've got any friends who play already, just ask them for their one. If you enjoyed the video and found it interesting, please consider donating a like and a subscribe. And if you think they'd enjoy it, maybe share it with a mate, because that does really help me out. I do have a Patreon if you'd like to help fund my burrito habit, but honestly, just by watching, liking and commenting, you're already doing more than enough. And with all that said, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.